My daughter told me not to come to Thanksgiving dinner with my late husband's family. Stay home, Mom. Nobody wants you there anyway. So I ate alone. A frozen turkey dinner for one. The next Tuesday, she showed up at my door with homemade soup and a smile that looked almost real. The label on the jar said, "Made with love." 2 hours later, I was dying on my kitchen floor, unable to breathe. When the paramedic asked about my emergency contact, I whispered, "I don't have anyone." He looked at me strangely and said, "Ma'am, your daughter called 911 3 minutes before we got here, and she told us a very different story." Thank you for being here. Before the story continues, leave a quick comment and tell me where you're watching from. I read everyone. This story includes some fictionalized details for educational storytelling purposes, but the message itself is intended to be meaningful and helpful. I'm Claire Donovan, 60 years old, and 3 weeks ago my only daughter brought me homemade soup in a mason jar. The label said, "Made with love." That soup almost ended my life. But to understand how I ended up on my kitchen floor gasping for air while my daughter watched through a camera she'd installed for my safety, I need to take you back 6 months. Back to when I still believed blood meant family. Richard passed away on a Tuesday in March. Heart attack. Quick, the doctors said, like that was supposed to be a comfort. He was here in the morning, making coffee the way he always did, strong enough to wake the dead, he used to joke. By afternoon, he was gone. 6 months later, I still make 2 cups every morning. I know it's foolish. I pour the second one down the sink while it's still hot, watch the steam rise and disappear. Just like him. Our house on Willow Creek Drive feels enormous now. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a kitchen. We renovated together 5 years ago because Richard said we deserved nice things after all those years of teaching. We'd planned to fill it with grandchildren someday. Instead, it's just me and the silence. I keep his photo on the mantle, the one from our trip to Rocky Mountain National Park where he's squinting into the sun, grinning like he just told the world's best joke. Some mornings I talk to it out loud. I know how that sounds. "I miss you," I told him this morning, standing there in my bathrobe with my coffee getting cold. "Brianna hasn't called in 2 weeks. I don't think she's coming for Thanksgiving." The photo didn't answer. It never does. Brianna is our daughter, our only child. She's 34, now works in real estate downtown, drives a car that cost more than Richard and I spent on our first house. We were close once. When she was little, she'd follow me around the kitchen, standing on a stool to help me stir cookie batter. She'd call me every Sunday when she went to college just to talk. I can't remember when the calls stopped. It happened gradually the way ice forms on a lake. One day you're walking on solid ground, the next you're testing every step, wondering when you'll fall through. Richard used to make excuses for her. "She's busy, honey, building a career. She'll come around." But even he stopped saying it toward the end. I'd catch him staring at his phone sometimes, waiting for a text that never came. The only person who visits regularly now is Evelyn from next door. She's 65, has silver hair she wears in a braid, and shows up every afternoon like clockwork with something fresh bread, a newspaper, sometimes just her company. Yesterday, she brought pumpkin spice cookies. "You doing okay?" she asked, the way she always does, her eyes scanning my face for cracks. "I'm fine," I lied the way I always do. She didn't believe me. Evelyn never does, but she doesn't push, and I'm grateful for that. She just sat with me at the kitchen table, drinking tea and talking about her grandson's soccer team, filling the silence with noise that almost felt like normal. After she left, I stood at the window, watching November light fade behind the mountains. Thanksgiving was 2 weeks away, the first one without Richard. I'd need to figure out what to do. Maybe Evelyn would have me over. Maybe I'd just heat up something from the grocery store and pretend it was a regular Thursday. I picked up my phone twice to call Brianna. Put it down both times. Pride, maybe, or fear. Fear that she wouldn't answer. Fear that she would. And I'd hear that tone in her voice, the one that said I was interrupting something important. The photo on the mantel caught the last bit of sunlight. Richard forever squinting, forever grinning. Thanksgiving was coming. The house felt colder than usual. I didn't know then that it would be the last one I'd spend believing my daughter loved me. But before that, Thanksgiving came. Before the soup and the camera and everything that followed, there was a meeting. 3 weeks after we buried Richard Walter Grayson called me into his office. Walter had been Richard's attorney for over 20 years, a careful man in his early 60s with silver-rimmed glasses. His office sat above Pearl Street in downtown Boulder, all dark wood and leather chairs. I wore the black dress from the funeral because I didn't know what else to wear. Brianna arrived 15 minutes late. Cream-colored suit, sleek ponytail, phone in hand. She barely looked at me. "Sorry," she said, not sounding sorry. "Client meeting ran long." Walter waited until she placed her phone down. Then he opened a folder with Richard's will inside. "Richard's estate totals approximately $1.3 million, Walter began. "This includes the house on Willow Creek Drive valued at $820,000, investment accounts of $290,000, and savings of $195,000. I felt Brianna shift beside me. The numbers felt surreal. Richard and I had saved carefully on teacher salaries for 35 years, but hearing the total out loud felt like someone else's life. The distribution is as follows." Walter continued, his shoulders tensing slightly. 80% goes to Claire Donovan outright and without restriction. He paused. The remaining 20% is designated for Brianna Callahan to be distributed only after Claire's passing. Silence. I could hear traffic below, a car alarm in the distance. "What?" Brianna's voice cut through the quiet. Walter kept his eyes on the document. "Your father wanted to ensure your mother's financial security. He didn't trust me." Her voice had gone flat, cold. "That's what you're saying." I turned to look at her. Her jaw was tight knuckles, white on the armrests. Her eyes had gone dark in a way I'd never seen. Something cold and calculating flickered there. "Honey," I reached for her hand. "Your father loved you." She yanked away. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing. I didn't." "Did you tell him about the loan I asked for? Did you tell him my business was struggling?" "Brianna, I never—" "Richard expressed concerns about spending habits," Walter said quietly. "This is ridiculous." Brianna stood grabbing her phone. "He leaves everything to her and I get 20% after she's gone. I could be waiting another 20 years. The words hit like cold water. Another 20 years, as if she were counting down until I wasn't here anymore. "Brianna, please sit down." "No." She looked at me, then really looked, and what I saw made my chest tighten. Not grief, not even anger. Something that looked almost like hatred. "This is what he thought of me." "What you both thought?" "That's not true," I whispered. She was already at the door. "I have to get back to work." The door closed with a soft click. Walter and I sat in silence. "She's upset," I said, my voice shaking. "She doesn't mean it. She's still grieving." Walter looked at me over his glasses. Something flickered across his face, concern or pity. "Richard asked me to tell you something," he said finally. "If Brianna reacted badly, he said he was sorry, but he needed to make sure you were protected." Protected. The word hung between us. Protected from what? From my own daughter. I should have asked what Richard meant. Should have pressed for details about what my husband had known or feared. Should have paid attention to how Brianna's face transformed when she heard those numbers, to the ice in her eyes, when she calculated 20 more years. Should have noticed that look, that cold, calculating darkness. But I didn't. I was too busy making excuses for her. I kept making excuses for 2 more months. Every time Brianna's name didn't appear on my phone, I told myself she was busy with work. Real estate was demanding in Boulder's competitive market. Every time she cut our calls short, I convinced myself she was grieving differently than I was. I wore my denial like armor until the Thanksgiving call. It was early November, 2 weeks before the holiday. The aspens had turned gold, and the first cold had settled into the valley. I was in the kitchen with my coffee when I finally worked up the courage to call her. She answered on the 4th ring. "Hey, Mom." Her voice was flat, distracted. "Hi, sweetheart. I was thinking about Thanksgiving. I know it'll be hard without your dad, but maybe we could—" "I'm going to the Donovans." Richard's family. His sister had hosted Thanksgiving for 35 years. Our tradition, our second home. "Oh, what time should I be there? I can bring the sweet potato casserole." "Mom." Her tone shifted, colder. "It's not really for you." The words didn't make sense. "What do you mean? I've been going there since before you were born. Richard's sister and I—" "That was when Dad was alive." The silence felt like falling. "Brianna, I'm still family. We can go together." Mom, stop. She cut me off. You're not invited. I talked to Richard's sister. She agrees it's better if you stay home. Your grief makes people uncomfortable. My hands shook. I set the coffee cup down. My grief makes people uncomfortable. You know what I mean. You cry at everything. You talk about Dad constantly. People don't know what to say to you. Brianna, he was my husband for 36 years. He passed away 6 months ago. Exactly, 6 months, Mom. At some point you have to move on. I couldn't speak. So I can't come to Thanksgiving. It's easier this way. Her voice softened, but it felt rehearsed. Stay home, Mom. Nobody wants you there anyway. It's just easier this way. The words hit like a fist. You don't mean that. I'm trying to be honest. Look, I have to go. I'm pulling into a meeting. Brianna, wait. The line went dead. I sat there staring at the phone. Outside, the mountains were sharp against the November sky. The coffee had gone cold. Nobody wants you there anyway. I told myself she was grieving, that she didn't mean it, that she was overwhelmed. I told myself a lot of things that day. None of them were true. Thanksgiving came. I stayed home. I roasted a small chicken breast and made mashed potatoes for one. I ate at the kitchen table with the television on, watching a parade I didn't care about. The house smelled like food but felt empty. I didn't cry. I'd run out of tears. That evening, I went online. The photos were everywhere. Brianna at the Donovans' house, smiling at a crowded table. Brianna holding wine, laughing with Richard's sister. Brianna in a cream sweater, surrounded by warmth and family. 12 photos total. I wasn't in any of them. I scrolled slowly, studying each one, looking for some sign I'd been missed, that someone had asked about me, that my absence had left even the smallest gap. There was nothing. But what twisted my stomach wasn't my absence. It was her face. She looked happy, relaxed, free, like my absence had been a relief. I should have known then. I should have seen the pattern, the will reading, the coldness, the exclusion, the lie, because I found out later that Richard's sister never agreed to exclude me. She hadn't even known I wasn't coming. But I didn't see it, because 3 weeks later my daughter showed up at my door with a mason jar of soup and a smile that looked almost genuine. And I was so desperate to believe she still loved me that I let her in. That soup almost ended my life. Around 4 o'clock on Thanksgiving afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Evelyn Parker standing on my porch, holding a covered dish. I made too much pumpkin pie, she said. Thought you might want some. She was lying. Evelyn had seen my car in the driveway all day. She knew I was alone. Come in, I said. We sat in the living room. Evelyn cut 2 slices and handed me one. Where's Brianna today? She asked gently. At the Donovans. Richard's sister Carol is hosting. And you didn't want to go? I looked down. I wasn't invited. Evelyn's fork stopped. What? Brianna told me to stay home. She said it would be easier. Evelyn set her plate down. Claire, that's not right. It's fine. But it wasn't, and Evelyn knew it. She didn't push. She just sat with me. Before she left, she squeezed my hand. If you need anything, I'm right next door. After she left, I made the mistake of opening my phone. The photos were everywhere, posted by Carol and her daughter, Michelle. The Donovans' Thanksgiving dinner in full swing. Carol's dining room decorated with fall leaves. A long table filled with people laughing, talking, passing dishes. And there in the center was Brianna, smiling, radiant, her arm around Carol's shoulder. The caption read, "Grateful for family today. Missing Richard, but his beautiful daughter is here with us." I scrolled through more. Brianna helping Michelle set the table. Brianna laughing with Carol's husband, Tom. Brianna holding pie surrounded by people who loved her. I wasn't in a single photo. I had been edited out entirely. That evening, my phone rang. Carol Donovan. I almost didn't answer. Claire. Carol's voice was warm but tentative. How was your Thanksgiving? Quiet. I'm sorry I didn't call sooner. She paused. Did you and Brianna have a fight? I frowned. Why? She told us you didn't want to come, that you were still grieving and wanted to be alone, that you'd asked her not to push. The room tilted. She said what? She said you wanted to be alone, that it was too hard without Richard. I closed my eyes. Carol, I didn't choose to stay home. Brianna told me not to come. She said nobody wanted me there. Silence. Then quietly, oh my God. She lied to you. She told me one thing and told you another. Carol's voice cracked. "Claire, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. It's not your fault. I should have called you directly." She took a shaky breath. "This isn't the first time, is it?" "What do you mean?" "Brianna. She's always been careful about what she tells people. Richard used to worry. He said she had a way of rewriting the truth." I sat down slowly. I didn't realize he'd noticed. He noticed a lot. Carol's voice was thick. "I'm coming over tomorrow. We need to talk." After we hung up, I sat in the dark. Brianna had lied to everyone. She had told me I wasn't wanted. She had told the Donovans I didn't want to come. She had isolated me deliberately, carefully. I looked at the photos again. Brianna's smiling face, the illusion of love. My daughter was very good at manipulating people. She had turned me into the problem. The grieving widow who couldn't handle gatherings, the dramatic mother who needed space. She had rewritten the narrative so completely that no one questioned it. Not even me, until now. Loneliness had made me vulnerable, and my daughter had known exactly how to use it. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when Brianna brought me the soup that would nearly end my life. I woke to the sound of the doorbell at 10:30 a.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw my daughter standing on the porch holding a mason jar filled with something deep orange and thick. I opened the door. "Mom." Brianna's smile was bright. Too bright. "I made you something." She held up the jar. The label was handwritten in her careful script, "Mom's favorite veggie soup, made with love bee. Thai-style carrot curry soup," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Extremely spicy. Carrots, sweet potato, coconut milk, Thai chilies, ginger, garlic, lemongrass. Remember how Dad used to make those insanely hot curries?" I did remember. Richard had loved bold, aggressive flavors. "You didn't have to do this," I said, taking the jar. It was still warm. I wanted to. Brianna set her purse down on the kitchen counter. "I've been researching Thai curry recipes that don't use any seafood or fish sauce. I used vegetable stock. Nothing that could trigger your allergy." She emphasized the last sentence, looking directly at me. I had been fighting a cold for 3 days. My sinuses were completely blocked. The thick scent of curry and chili barely registered. "That's very thoughtful." Brianna poured herself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table. We talked small talk, nothing important. She asked about my cold. I told her I was managing. Then she glanced toward the front door. "Oh, the doorbell camera is still working okay, right? The one I installed 3 weeks ago." I nodded. She had installed it the week after Thanksgiving, the week after she told me not to come to the Donovans' dinner. She'd said it was because she worried about me being alone. "It's fine," I said. "I don't use it much." "You should keep the battery charged." Brianna said, her tone almost sharp. "It's for your safety, Mom. I check it sometimes when I'm worried about you." At the time, I thought it was concern. Now I know she was making sure it was fully operational, making sure the camera angle captured the kitchen window, making sure she could watch me from anywhere. Brianna stayed for another 20 minutes. She made coffee. We sat together. She seemed almost caring. Then her phone buzzed. "I have to go," she said, standing abruptly. "Client meeting." She kissed my cheek, something she rarely did, and left. I stood at the window and watched her car pull away. The soup sat on the counter, still warm. I looked at the label again, "Made with love bee." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. I put the soup in the refrigerator. I didn't know that in 2 hours I would heat it up for lunch. I didn't know that Brianna would park her car 2 blocks away and watch me through the doorbell camera, the same camera she had installed 3 weeks earlier, not for my safety, but to witness my final breaths. I didn't know that while I was making coffee with her that morning, she had quietly unzipped my purse on the counter and slipped the orange EpiPen case into her jacket pocket. And I didn't know that the intensely spicy Thai curry, the kind Richard used to make to clear sinuses, was designed to hide the taste of concentrated shrimp extract until my throat was already closing. If I had known, I would have poured that soup down the drain. But the spices were too strong, too deliberate. She made sure I wouldn't taste the shrimp until it was too late. 2 hours later, I heated the soup for lunch. It was 12:15 p.m. The cold had settled deeper into my sinuses. I couldn't smell much of anything, just the faint, distant heat of spice. I ladled the soup into a bowl and sat at the kitchen table. The first spoonful was hot. The ginger burned my throat in a way that felt good, like it might clear the congestion. I took another bite, then another. Because my nose was completely blocked, I couldn't taste the complexity of the flavors, just heat salt and a vague sweetness from the coconut milk. I kept eating. By the fourth spoonful, something changed. A strange aftertaste spread across my tongue. Not the sweetness of vegetables, something richer, deeper. Seafood. My throat tightened. No. I dropped the spoon. It clattered against the bowl. I looked down at the soup, the thick orange liquid, the chunks of carrot and sweet potato. My lips began to tingle. Oh God, shrimp. There was shrimp stock in the soup. My tongue started to swell. I stood knocking the chair backward. My purse, the EpiPen. It was in my purse. I stumbled to the counter and grabbed my bag, dumping the contents onto the table. Wallet, keys, tissues, lip balm. No orange case. I dug deeper, my hands shaking. The innermost pocket where I always kept the life-saving case was empty. It was gone. Both the case and the injector inside were missing. My throat was closing. I couldn't breathe. She took it. The realization hit me like a fist to the chest. Brianna had been in this kitchen 2 hours ago. She had stood at this counter. She had access to my purse. She took my EpiPen, and then she gave me the soup. My vision blurred, my knees buckled. I tried to reach for my phone, but my hands wouldn't cooperate. My fingers felt thick and clumsy. The kitchen tilted. I hit the floor. The last thing I heard was a car door slamming outside. I woke to the sound of voices arguing. Everything was blurry. My throat burned. I couldn't breathe. How did you even know she was in trouble? That was Evelyn's voice, sharp, angry. I saw her on the camera. Brianna, you were miles away. How convenient that you just happened to be watching at the exact moment. I check on her. She's my mother. I tried to move, couldn't. My body felt heavy, disconnected. I was on the floor, the kitchen floor, cold tile against my cheek. You called the police and told them there was no rush. I didn't want to overreact. Your mother is dying and you didn't want to overreact. Footsteps, fast, coming toward me. Claire, oh God, Claire, can you hear me? Evelyn's face appeared above me, her hands on my shoulders. Her eyes were wide with fear. She's not breathing right. Brianna, call 911 now. Call them again, Evelyn screamed. Tell them she's not breathing. I heard Brianna's voice distant and shaking, different from the voice she'd used with Evelyn. Desperate now. Yes, my mother, she's not breathing. Please, you have to send someone 2847 Willow Creek Drive. Please hurry. Evelyn's hands were on my face, now tilting my head back, checking my airway. Stay with me, Claire. Stay with me. Everything went dark. The next thing I heard was a siren, getting closer, louder. Then voices. Multiple voices. Professional. Calm. Female approximately 60 years old, unresponsive, severe respiratory distress. Hands on my body, checking my pulse, my breathing. Probable anaphylactic shock, airway severely compromised. Someone lifted my eyelid, a bright light flashed. Pupils reactive, BP dropping. We need to move fast. A mask over my face, pressure, air forcing its way into my lungs. Start a line, get the epi ready. A sharp sting in my arm, then another in my thigh. Suddenly air, real air, flooding into my lungs. I gasped, coughed, gasped again. There we go, that's it, keep breathing. The voice was male, young, steady. I opened my eyes. A man in a dark blue uniform leaned over me, his gloved hands checking the oxygen mask on my face. His name tag read, Lucas Warren, EMTP. Welcome back, Mrs. Donovan, he said. You're going to be okay. We've got you. They lifted me onto a stretcher. Everything moved in fragments. The ceiling of my kitchen, the hallway, the front door. Evelyn's face streaked with tears. I'm coming with you. Ma'am, you'll need to meet us at the hospital. I'm not leaving her. Brianna was standing by the door, her arms wrapped around herself. Her face was pale, her eyes red. She looked terrified, or guilty. I couldn't tell anymore. In the ambulance, Lucas worked quickly. He adjusted the IV, checked monitors, spoke into a radio. Patient is stabilizing. O2 sat improving. ETA to Boulder Community Health, 7 minutes. Another paramedic, a woman with short gray hair, sat across from me holding my hand. You're doing great, she said softly. Just keep breathing. Lucas glanced toward the front of the ambulance. "Hey, Jamie, what was the initial call?" The driver's voice answered. "Non-emergency line. Daughter called at 12:28 saying her mom might have stumbled. Said no rush." Lucas frowned. "Non-emergency. Yeah, dispatch logged it low priority. Then neighbor called 911 at 12:31 screaming the patient wasn't breathing. That's when we got the full response." Lucas was quiet for a moment. Then he looked down at me, his expression unreadable. "Mrs. Donovan, do you know what caused this reaction?" I tried to speak. My throat was raw, but I managed one word. "Soup." "Soup." I nodded. "What kind of soup?" "My daughter made it." Lucas exchanged a glance with the other paramedic. "We'll make sure the doctors know," he said quietly. At the hospital, they rushed me into the emergency department. Doctors, nurses, bright lights, beeping machines. Someone asked me questions about allergies, about what I'd eaten. "Shrimp," I whispered. There was shrimp in the soup. A doctor, middle-aged with kind eyes, leaned close. "Mrs. Donovan, where is your EpiPen?" I closed my eyes. Tears leaked out. "Gone," I whispered. It was gone. The doctor's expression darkened. "We're going to admit you for observation," she said. "You're stable now, but we need to monitor you." Hours later, when they'd finally moved me to a room and the medications had dulled the worst of the pain, I lay in the dark and tried to piece together what had happened. Brianna had brought me soup. Brianna had installed cameras. Brianna had been watching. And when I collapsed, she had called a non-emergency line and said there was no rush. If Evelyn hadn't been home, if Evelyn hadn't heard me fall, if Evelyn hadn't called 911, I would be dead. And my daughter would have inherited everything. His name was Lucas Warren, and he saved my life twice. The first time was in the ambulance. The second time was in the days that followed. By the time we reached Boulder Community Health, my throat had opened enough to breathe without the mask. They rushed me into the emergency department. The ER doctor, Dr. Patel, asked careful questions about what I'd eaten. "Shrimp," I whispered. There was shrimp in the soup. "And your EpiPen." I closed my eyes. It was gone. The case was gone from my purse. Dr. Patel exchanged a glance with Lucas, who stood near the doorway. "We're admitting you for observation," she said. "Your vitals are stabilizing, but anaphylaxis can have delayed complications." They moved me to a room on the 4th floor. Brianna came immediately, tears streaming. "Mom, oh my God." A nurse stepped between us. "Mrs. Donovan needs rest. You can visit later." Brianna hesitated, then left. That evening, after visiting hours ended, there was a soft knock. Lucas stepped inside, still in his uniform. "I hope it's okay that I came by," he said. "I wanted to check on you." "You didn't have to." "I know." He pulled a chair close. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "The soup, your daughter made it?" "Yes." "And she knows about your shellfish allergy?" "Since she was 8. Lucas looked down at his hands. "I kept the mason jar from your table. It's in an evidence bag at the fire station. I spoke to Detective Olivia Grant. If that soup contains shrimp, she'll have it analyzed." My throat tightened. "There's something else," Lucas said. "The timeline bothers me." He pulled out a small notebook. "Your daughter called the Boulder Police non-emergency line at 12:28 p.m. The dispatcher logged it. She said you might have stumbled in the kitchen, but that you tend to be dramatic for attention. She told them there was no rush." He paused. 3 minutes later, at 12:31, your neighbor, Evelyn, called 911 saying you were unconscious and not breathing. That's the call we responded to. We arrived at 12:37. I stared at him. If your daughter was watching you on a camera and saw you collapse, why would she call the slowest line and tell them not to rush? The room felt very cold. "I don't know," I whispered. Lucas leaned forward, his voice low and careful. "Mrs. Donovan, I've been a paramedic for 11 years. I know what anaphylaxis looks like. I know the progression, and I know that if we'd arrived 5 minutes later, you wouldn't have made it." He let that settle. "That wasn't an accident." Silence filled the room. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him he was wrong, but I couldn't. Lucas spoke again, his voice softer now. "I had a younger sister, Emily. She stayed in a bad relationship for 3 years. I didn't see the warning signs until it was too late. She's gone now." His jaw tightened. "I couldn't help her, but I can help you." I looked at this stranger who had pulled me back from the edge. "What do I do?" I whispered. "First, you recover. Second, you let Detective Grant do her job. And third," he stood. I have a friend, Austin Kelly. He's a digital forensics analyst, works with Boulder PD and private investigators. If your daughter installed cameras and was watching through them, Austin can pull the access logs legally with a warrant. He moved toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. Detective Grant will want to interview you when you're ready. Don't rush it. But when she does tell her everything, the soup, the missing EpiPen, the phone call your daughter made to invite you to Thanksgiving, and then uninvite you. I nodded slowly. Lucas smiled just a little. Get some rest, Mrs. Donovan. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling Austin. We're going to figure out what really happened. He left quietly. I lay in the dark hospital room listening to the beep of the monitors. And for the first time since Thanksgiving, I wasn't alone. I woke to find Brianna holding my hand and crying. It was a performance. But I didn't say anything. I was waiting for Austin. It was Thursday night in the hospital. Brianna had been at my bedside for hours, playing the role of the devoted daughter. I'm so glad you're okay, Mom, she said, her voice trembling. I was so scared. The nurse smiled at her. Your daughter hasn't left your side. Brianna squeezed my hand. I said nothing. Out in the hallway, I heard raised voices. Evelyn had arrived. She was arguing with someone Brianna I realized when my daughter abruptly stood and walked out. Their voices carried through the door. How did you know? Evelyn demanded. I saw her on the camera. You were 2 miles away. Silence. Then Brianna's voice colder now. I was worried about her. I checked the cameras when she doesn't answer her phone. The next morning, Austin Kelly arrived. He was 33, lean, and carried a laptop bag. Lucas had arranged for him to consult with Detective Grant on the digital evidence. Austin sat beside my bed and opened his laptop. Mrs. Donovan, he said, I'm a digital forensics analyst working with the Boulder Police Department. Detective Grant asked me to examine your home security system. Do you give permission for me to access the camera data? I nodded. He typed quickly, his expression focused. Okay, Austin said after a moment. Here's what I found. He turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a map showing a small blue dot. This is your daughter's phone, Austin said. GPS data shows she left your house at 10:45 a.m. on Tuesday. At 11 a.m., she parked here 2 blocks away. She stayed in that location for 93 minutes. I stared at the screen. She was watching you, Austin said quietly. He clicked to another screen showing 2 camera feeds side by side. The left showed my front porch. The right showed my kitchen. Your daughter installed 2 cameras 3 weeks ago, Austin said. A doorbell camera and an indoor camera covering your kitchen and living area. She told you it was for your safety. He clicked forward to show app activity logs. Between 12:10 and 12:35 p.m., the indoor kitchen feed was accessed 47 times from her phone. She wasn't just checking the porch. She was watching you eat. She was waiting for the first sign of a reaction. 47 times. Austin pulled up a split-screen view. Timestamp 12:27 p.m. On the right side of the screen, I saw myself clutch my throat and drop the spoon. She saw this, Austin said. In real time. He paused the video. 1 minute later, at 12:28 p.m., your daughter made a phone call. Austin opened another file. But she didn't call 911. She called the Boulder Police Department's non-emergency line. She told the dispatcher you might have stumbled, but that you tend to be dramatic and there was no rush. He looked at me. That call was classified as a low-priority welfare check, estimated response time 30 to 60 minutes. But at 12:31 p.m., 3 minutes later, your neighbor Evelyn called 911 and said you weren't breathing. That call triggered an immediate emergency response. The ambulance arrived at 12:37 p.m. Austin leaned forward. Mrs. Donovan, if Evelyn hadn't been home, the ambulance wouldn't have arrived in time. Your daughter's call ensured that. I closed my eyes. She watched me collapse, I whispered. And then she made sure help wouldn't come. Not exactly, Austin said. She called, but she chose the slowest possible option. She was creating a paper trail. She wanted to be able to say, I tried to help. But she made sure the help would arrive too late. Detective Grant appeared in the doorway. We also got the lab results, Grant said, stepping into the room. The soup contained concentrated shrimp extract, significant levels masked with Thai curry spices. She held up an evidence bag containing a small white bottle. And we executed a search warrant on your daughter's car. We found your EpiPen case in the trunk, the orange one with your prescription label. Her fingerprints are all over it." I looked at the evidence bag. "She took it," I said. "Yes," Grant said. "She did." Austin closed his laptop. "Mrs. Donovan, we have enough evidence to move forward. The question is, do you want to press charges?" I looked at Evelyn, who had quietly entered the room. She nodded. I looked back at Detective Grant. "Yes," I said. "I want justice." Walter Grayson came to see me with a secret he'd been keeping for 6 months. I'd been home from the hospital for 5 days. Evelyn was staying with me, sleeping in the guest room, cooking meals I barely touched, sitting with me when the silence got too heavy. Detective Olivia Grant had called twice to update me on the investigation. Austin had delivered copies of all the evidence to the Boulder Police Department. And then Walter knocked on my door. He looked older than I remembered. Thinner. The lines around his eyes deeper. His shoulders hunched with something heavier than age. "Claire," he said quietly, "may I come in?" I let him in. We sat in the living room, the same room where Brianna had waited, while I went to the garage to find her a book, where she'd been alone with my purse. Walter didn't waste time. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Something I should have told you months ago." He took a breath. 6 months before Richard passed away, he came to my office alone. He asked me not to tell you he'd been there. I stared at him. He'd been to see a cardiologist. Walter continued, his voice low. "Several times, actually. The tests showed his heart was failing, severely weakened. The doctor told him it could be a year. It could be a month. It could be tomorrow." My chest tightened. "Richard didn't want you to know," Walter said quietly. "He didn't want you spending every day watching him, waiting for the end. He wanted you to have as much normalcy as possible for as long as possible." Tears burned my eyes. Richard had known, but he also knew he needed to protect you, Walter said. "Not from the heart attack, from what would come after." He paused. "He told me Brianna was in trouble, financial trouble, deep debt, bad debt. He wouldn't tell me all the details, but he said she owed $340,000, failing business deals, bad investments. He bailed her out twice before and it had only gotten worse." My hands clenched in my lap. "That's why he restructured the will the way he did," Walter continued. 80% to you immediately, 20% to Brianna only after you pass. He wanted to make sure you were protected, that she couldn't pressure you for money while you were grieving." I closed my eyes. Richard had been protecting me even then. After he passed, Walter said slowly, "Brianna started calling me. The first time was 3 days after the funeral. She wanted to know if there was any way to access her share early. I told her no. The will was clear." He paused, his jaw tight. "She called 5 more times over the next few months, each time more desperate, more insistent." When I whispered, "The last call was 3 weeks before she brought you the soup," Walter said. "She asked me to meet her at her office. She said it was urgent." The meeting had been tense. Brianna's real estate office, mid-afternoon. She'd closed the door and sat across from Walter with her hands folded on the desk. "I need $50,000, she'd said. "Just in advance on my inheritance. I'll pay it back." Walter had shaken his head. "I can't do that, Brianna. The will is explicit. You don't inherit anything until after your mother passes. My father's gone." Her voice had been cold, flat. "Wills can be reinterpreted." Walter had stared at her. "Are you asking me to break the law?" She'd stood, walked to the door, opened it. "Forget it," she'd said. "I'll handle it myself." 1 week later, she'd shown up at my house with a mason jar of soup. Walter looked at me now, his eyes red. "I should have warned you," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have told you she was desperate, but I thought I hoped she'd find another way. I never imagined she'd—" He couldn't finish. "Richard tried to protect me," I whispered. "Even after he was gone." Walter nodded. "He loved you, Claire, more than anything." We sat in silence for a moment. Then Walter stood preparing to leave. "The police just called me before I came here," he said quietly. "They're executing a search warrant for Brianna's home and car today. They're looking for evidence." My breath caught. "And Claire," Walter said, meeting my eyes, "I think they're going to find it." They found the EpiPen case in the trunk of Brianna's car, wrapped in a Target bag. 2 weeks after the poisoning, Detective Olivia Grant sat across from me in my living room and placed a photograph on the coffee table. Mrs. Donovan, she said quietly, we found it. The photo showed an orange case in a clear evidence bag. My prescription label was still visible, the case I had searched for frantically while my throat closed. Found in the trunk of Brianna's BMW, Grant said. Hidden beneath real estate marketing materials, wrapped in a Target bag. I stared at the photo, hands trembling. We executed a search warrant 5 days after you were hospitalized, Grant continued. When we asked to search her vehicle, her lawyer advised her to refuse. That's when we knew. Grant pulled out a forensics report. Her fingerprints are all over it. On the case, on the inner holder, on the empty injector. She didn't just take it, she handled it multiple times. My voice came out as a whisper. Why keep it? Our forensic psychologist believes she couldn't safely dispose of it, Grant said. After you were hospitalized, we were watching her. Her schedule was packed with meetings. She thought hiding it in her expensive car would make it invisible. She assumed no one would search the vehicle of a grieving businesswoman. I closed my eyes. She thought she'd gotten away with it, Grant said. If you died, it would be ruled an accident, and she'd inherit everything. Grant pulled out another document. We subpoenaed her financial records, $340,000 in debt. Credit cards maxed, personal loans and collections, business line of credit 3 months overdue. She was drowning Claire. She placed an email on top. November 9th, 5 days before the soup. She emailed Walter asking for $50,000. He refused. Told her the estate couldn't be distributed while you were alive. Grant tapped the email. She replied, forget it. Don't tell my mom I asked. Consciousness of guilt, I said quietly. Grant nodded. Exactly. We recovered her laptop, Grant said. Browser history from late October shows weeks of research. How to cause anaphylactic shock. How long death takes without an EpiPen. How to hide seafood taste in curry. She pulled out another photo. Grocery receipt. She purchased concentrated shrimp extract 2 days before. King Soopers 12 miles from her usual location. Paid cash. But security cameras captured her. I looked at the evidence on my coffee table. The orange case. The financial records. The email. The receipt. She planned it, I said. My voice was flat. Yes, Grant said. Every detail, the soup, the spices, stealing your EpiPen, the cameras. The call designed to look concerned while ensuring help wouldn't arrive in time. Grant's expression softened. But she made mistakes. She underestimated your neighbor. She underestimated Lucas. And she underestimated how thoroughly we'd investigate. She gathered the documents. The district attorney is moving forward. We're charging her with attempted murder in the first-degree conspiracy and theft of a medical device. With this evidence, we can prove intent and premeditation. I looked at the photograph again, my orange EpiPen case, hidden in my daughter's trunk like evidence of a crime, because that's exactly what it was. When I asked, we arrest her tomorrow, Grant said. Walter will call her to his office to discuss the estate. When she arrives, we'll be waiting. I nodded slowly. Good, I said. Let's end this. Brianna walked into Walter's office expecting a payday. What she got was the truth. Walter had called her that morning, offering a partial distribution due to my health crisis. She agreed to come at 2 o'clock. Now she stood in the conference room doorway wearing a navy blazer, pressed slacks, and pearls. She looked like success. She stopped when she saw me at the table. Then Detective Olivia Grant. Then Austin Kelly, the forensics analyst. Walter closed the door. What is this? Brianna's voice was sharp. Sit down, Walter said quietly. She didn't move. Detective Grant stood. Ms. Callahan, we have questions about November 14th. You're not under arrest. You're free to leave, but you'll want to hear what we have to say. Brianna sat stiffly. Austin tapped a key. The wall monitor lit up with a map. We tracked your mobile device, he said. You parked 2 blocks from your mother's house at 11 a.m. You stayed there for 93 minutes, until 12:33 p.m. Brianna folded her arms. I had client calls. Austin clicked again. A phone log appeared. November 14th. Call history 11 a.m. to 12:33 p.m. 0 outgoing calls. You made no calls, Austin said. Brianna's face tightened. Detective Grant leaned forward. What were you doing for 93 minutes, Brianna? Silence. Let me show you, Detective Grant said. She pressed play on an audio file. Brianna's voice filled the room. Hi, I'm calling about my mom. I saw her stumble on the camera. She does this sometimes. She's dramatic for attention. Could someone do a welfare check when you get a chance? No rush. I'm sure she's fine. The dispatcher, is your mother in immediate danger? Brianna. No, she's probably just looking for sympathy. But I'm out of town. The recording stopped. Brianna's face went pale. You called the Boulder Police non-emergency line at 12:28 p.m., Detective Grant said. You told them there was no rush. She paused. But you weren't out of town, were you? Brianna said nothing. You were 2 blocks away, Detective Grant continued. In your car, watching. I stared at my daughter across the table. You told them I was being dramatic, I whispered. You told them not to rush while I was dying. Brianna turned to me, eyes wet. Mom, I thought... At 12:31 p.m., Detective Grant interrupted. Evelyn Parker called 911. She reported you were unconscious and not breathing. The ambulance arrived 6 minutes later. If Evelyn hadn't called, you would be dead. My hands trembled in my lap. Austin clicked again. An orange plastic case appeared on screen. EpiPen label clearly visible. We found this in your car trunk 2 days ago, Detective Grant said. Wrapped in a Target bag, hidden under your real estate folders. Brianna stared at the screen. Your fingerprints are on the case, inside and out. You took the entire case, Brianna, not just the pen, the case. So your mother couldn't even find an empty one and know to call for help. I felt sick. Brianna stood abruptly. I want a lawyer. That's your right, Detective Grant said calmly. But there's one more thing you should see before you go. Austin clicked. A grocery receipt appeared. King Soopers, November 12th, concentrated shrimp extract, $8.47, payment cash. Below it, grainy security footage. Brianna at the register counting bills. My stomach dropped. You bought this 2 days before you brought your mother soup, Detective Grant said. You paid cash, no credit card trail. You researched how much shrimp protein would cause a fatal allergic reaction. You cooked the soup with heavy Thai curry spices to mask the seafood taste. You stole her EpiPen, and then you sat in your car and waited. Brianna's face crumpled. We also found search history on your laptop, Detective Grant continued. October 26th, multiple searches. How much shrimp causes anaphylaxis? How long until death without EpiPen? Best spices to hide seafood smell. Tears streamed down Brianna's face, but I felt nothing. Austin clicked one more time. Text appeared on the screen. Phone calendar. November 14th, 12:15 p.m. Reminder, start. Detective Grant leaned forward, her voice deadly quiet. We found this on your phone, a reminder you set for 12:15 p.m. One word, start. The exact time your mother would be eating lunch, the exact time you planned for her to open that soup jar. Brianna's breathing came in short gasps. This wasn't panic, Brianna. This wasn't a mistake. You set a reminder. You calculated the timing. You planned every single step. Brianna looked at me, her face wet with tears, her hands shaking. Mom, I'm so sorry. Don't, I said quietly. She flinched. Detective Grant stood. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., Boulder Police Department Interview Room 3. Bring your lawyer. We'll finish this conversation then. Brianna stood slowly unsteady on her feet. She looked at me one last time. I looked away. She walked out. The door closed. Walter exhaled and sat down heavily. Evelyn stepped in from the hallway and took my hand. Almost over, she whispered. I nodded, but I knew the hardest part was still to come. If you're still here, leave a comment and let me know you're staying with me. And tell me if you were in my place, what would you do next? Confront her, or let the truth unfold on its own. Before the final turn is revealed, share your prediction below. A brief note, the next part includes dramatized elements for storytelling. If this isn't for you, you may stop the video here. The next morning, Detective Grant called. Brianna's lawyer agreed to one final meeting. 10 a.m. I need you there, Claire. I arrived early. The Boulder Police Department felt colder than Walter's office. Fluorescent lights, vinyl chairs, burnt coffee. Brianna was already in interview room 3. Gray sweater, jeans, hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked small. Her lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, sat beside her. Detective Grant gestured for me to sit. Austin Kelly opened his laptop. Ms. Callahan. Detective Grant began. Yesterday we showed you evidence. GPS data, the non-emergency call, the EpiPen, the shrimp extract receipt, your browser history, the calendar reminder that said start. Brianna nodded stiffly. Today, Detective Grant said, we're going to show you something else. Austin turned the laptop screen toward us. We pulled every access log from the indoor kitchen camera app on your phone, he said. Every time you opened it, every screenshot you took. He clicked a button. The monitor on the wall lit up. A grid appeared, dozens of small images, all of me, all in my kitchen, all time-stamped. My breath caught. Austin clicked again. The images enlarged one by one. 12:15 p.m., me opening the mason jar lid. 12:16 p.m., me lifting the first spoonful. 12:18 p.m., me eating unaware. 12:22 p.m., me reaching for water. 12:25 p.m., me standing hand on the counter. 12:27 p.m., me clutching my throat, face, red eyes wide. He let that image stay on the screen. This one, Austin said quietly, was taken at 12:27 p.m. You can see Mrs. Donovan is in severe distress. Her airway is closing. She's struggling to breathe. He clicked again. Another screenshot. Same moment, slightly different angle. You took 2 screenshots of this moment, Brianna, Austin said. 2, while your mother was suffocating. I couldn't look away from the screen. That was me, dying, and my daughter had been watching. Austin clicked again. A timeline appeared. 12:27:14 p.m. Screenshot saved 12:27:18 p.m. Screenshot saved 12:27:22 p.m. Feed still active 12:27:45 p.m. Feed still active 12:28:3 p.m. Feed still active 12:28:14 p.m. Outgoing call Boulder. PD non-emergency. 3 minutes. Detective Grant said, her voice like ice. From the moment you took that first screenshot, the moment you saw your mother collapsing until you made a phone call. 3 minutes. Brianna stared at the table. Look at it, Brianna, Detective Grant said sharply. Brianna's lawyer touched her arm. You don't have to. Look at it, Detective Grant repeated. Slowly, Brianna lifted her eyes to the screen. The image of me, clutching my throat, dying. You didn't just see your mother collapse, Detective Grant said. You documented it. You took screenshots. You sat in your car 2 blocks away and you watched the clock. You waited. You didn't wait for help to arrive. You waited for her to die. Tears streamed down Brianna's face. But I felt nothing. You researched how long it takes, I said quietly. Brianna turned to me. My voice was steady now, cold. You looked it up. How long until death without EpiPen? You knew exactly how much time you had. You set a reminder so you wouldn't miss it. You took my EpiPen so I couldn't save myself. You gave me soup laced with shrimp. You installed cameras so you could watch. And then you sat there and counted down the minutes. Brianna covered her face. I thought someone would find you. You made sure no one would. I said. You called the slowest line possible. You told them not to rush. You told them I was faking. You wanted me gone. You wanted the money. And you were willing to watch me die to get it. Brianna sobbed into her hands. Detective Grant stood. Brianna Callahan, you are under arrest for attempted murder in the first-degree conspiracy to commit murder and theft of a medical device. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed in the small room. Brianna didn't resist. She looked at me one last time through her tears. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't answer. They led her away. Evelyn stepped in from the hallway and took my hand. Walter appeared behind her. It's over, he said quietly. I nodded. Brianna disappeared down the corridor in handcuffs. I watched her go, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe. 3 months after the arrest, I sat in a Boulder County courtroom and watched my daughter stand trial. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, legal students, people who had followed the case online. But in the front row sat the people who mattered. Evelyn on my left, Carol Donovan on my right. Carol had been silent for weeks after Brianna's arrest. She had believed Brianna's lie about Thanksgiving. But she came to the trial. She sat beside me every day. That was enough. The prosecution built their case methodically. They presented the mason jar with the handwritten label, They showed the jury the orange EpiPen case found in Brianna's trunk. They played the security camera footage split screen showing Brianna's car parked 2 blocks away while I collapsed in my kitchen. They entered the search history, the grocery receipt, the financial records into evidence. Walter testified about Brianna's desperate phone calls demanding money, but they didn't repeat every detail. The jury had seen it all in opening statements. Now the prosecution focused on building a timeline of intent. Then they called me. I took the stand, my hands trembling. The prosecutor, a woman named Jennifer Ross, asked me one simple question. "Mrs. Donovan, did your daughter know about your shellfish allergy?" "Yes," I said. "She's known since she was 8 years old." "Did she know where you kept your EpiPen?" "Yes, I showed her when she was young in case of emergency." Ross nodded. "And on the morning of November 14th, when your daughter brought you soup, did she have access to your purse?" I closed my eyes, remembering. "Yes, it was on the kitchen counter. We were drinking coffee together." "Thank you, Mrs. Donovan." The defense attorney, a man in his 50s with a skeptical expression, stood for cross-examination. "Mrs. Donovan, isn't it possible your daughter simply made a mistake, that she didn't realize the soup contained shrimp?" I looked at Brianna. She sat at the defense table, hands folded, face carefully blank. "No," I said quietly. "It wasn't a mistake." "How can you be sure?" "Because she researched it. She bought concentrated shrimp extract. She installed cameras to watch me. And when I collapsed, she called a non-emergency line and told them not to rush." I looked back at the attorney. "That's not a mistake, that's a plan." Closing arguments lasted 2 hours. The prosecution's final words were simple and devastating. Brianna Callahan had motive $340,000 in debt. She had Means concentrated shrimp extract purchased 2 days before. She had opportunity access to her mother's kitchen, her EpiPen, her home. And she had intent. She watched her mother collapse and chose not to save her. The defense argued accident, misunderstanding, panic. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the courtroom fell silent. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of theft of a medical device, we find the defendant guilty. Brianna's shoulders shook. She didn't make a sound. 2 weeks later, we returned for sentencing. Judge Patricia Hendricks looked down at Brianna with an expression I can only describe as contempt. "Ms. Callahan," she said, "you didn't act in a moment of passion. You didn't make a mistake. You planned your mother's death for 3 weeks. You researched how to cause it. You purchased the means. You stole her only defense. You installed cameras to watch her suffer. And when she collapsed, you deliberately chose the slowest possible way to call for help." The judge paused. "You are sentenced to 15 years in the Colorado Department of Corrections. You will not be eligible for parole for the first 10 years. The gavel came down. They led Brianna away in handcuffs. She didn't look back. Carol squeezed my hand, tears streaming. "I'm so sorry, Claire. I should have known." "You're here now," I said. "That's what matters." We walked out together, Evelyn, Carol, Lucas, Austin, Walter, Detective Grant, and me. The people who had stayed, the people who had fought for me, the people who had chosen me. I stepped outside into the February sunlight. For the first time in nearly a year, I felt free. 6 months after the trial, I did something I hadn't done in over a year. I laughed. Real laughter. The kind that comes from deep in your chest and makes your eyes water. The kind that feels like sunlight breaking through storm clouds after months of rain. It happened at Evelyn's kitchen table on a Thursday morning over coffee and blueberry muffins, still warm from the oven, when she told me about her disastrous attempt to use a grocery delivery app for the first time. 3 pounds of bananas. "Claire," she said, shaking her head. "I meant to order 3 bananas. Just 3. They delivered 3 pounds. I have banana bread for the next 6 months. I laughed until I couldn't breathe, until my sides hurt, until tears streamed down my face. And when I finally caught my breath, wiping my eyes with a napkin, I realized something profound. I was happy. Not the careful, measured contentment I'd forced myself to feel for years. Not the hollow performance of joy I'd worn like armor around Brianna. Real happiness, deep and warm and steady. Summer in Boulder brought warmth and light, and the scent of pine trees carried down from the mountains on the afternoon breeze. My life looked nothing like it had a year ago, and that was a very good thing. I started teaching again part-time 3 mornings a week at the community center on Canyon Boulevard, adult literacy classes, helping people who'd slipped through the cracks learn to read, watching their faces transform when words finally clicked into place, when sentences became stories. It felt good to be useful again, to be needed for the right reasons, not because someone wanted my money or my house or my death, but because I had something genuine to offer. Evelyn and I had lunch every Wednesday at the same small cafe on Pearl Street. We'd sit outside under the green umbrella sipping iced tea and talking about books we were reading, gardens we were planning, and sometimes nothing at all. Comfortable silence between people who understood each other. She'd become more than my neighbor. She was my best friend, the sister I'd never had. I joined a women's group at church, something I'd stopped attending after Richard passed away. Ruth Anderson, a warm, steady woman in her late 50s, with kind eyes and a quick laugh, had invited me 3 times before I finally said yes. "We're just a bunch of women who drink too much coffee and talk too much," she'd said with a smile. "You'll fit right in." She was right, I did. One afternoon in August, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find a young woman standing on my porch, smiling nervously, a leather portfolio tucked under her arm. "Mrs. Donovan," she said, "I don't know if you remember me. I'm Sophie Mitchell. You taught me in 3rd grade at Crestview Elementary." I stared at her for a moment. Sophie. Little Sophie with the braids and the gap-toothed smile and the stack of library books she carried everywhere. "Of course I remember you," I said, stepping aside. "Please come in." We sat in the living room and she told me she'd just finished her teaching degree at CU Boulder. She was starting her first job in the fall 3rd grade at Whittier Elementary, just a few miles away. "You inspired me," she said quietly, her hands folded in her lap. "You made me feel seen when no one else did. You believed I could do more than everyone else thought I could. I wanted to do that for other kids." My throat tightened with emotion. "That means more than you know," she smiled. "And I hope this isn't weird, but could I call you Claire instead of Mrs. Donovan? It feels less formal now that I'm not 8 years old anymore." I laughed. "I'd like that. Call me Claire." I developed new routines that felt like mine, not dictated by grief or obligation. Morning walks through the neighborhood, greeting neighbors by name. Coffee on the back porch with a book I actually wanted to read. Volunteering at the Boulder Public Library on Friday afternoons, helping with the children's reading hour. Richard's photo still sat on the mantel above the fireplace, but I could look at it now without the sharp, suffocating ache of grief that used to steal my breath. Sometimes I still talk to him. "I did it, Richard," I said one evening, standing in front of the photo with a glass of wine in my hand. "I protected myself, just like you wanted, just like you tried to make sure I could." I touched the frame gently. "I miss you every day, but I'm okay now. I'm more than okay." One Saturday evening in late August, I did something I never thought I'd do again. I hosted a dinner party. Evelyn brought a bottle of red wine and her famous spinach salad. Ruth brought a chicken casserole that smelled like heaven. Sophie brought sunflowers in a mason jar. Lucas, who'd stayed in touch and become a genuine friend over the months, brought fresh sourdough bread from the artisan bakery on Walnut Street. We sat around my kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten the soup that nearly killed me, and we ate and talked and laughed. Real laughter, real connection, real warmth. I looked around at their faces lit by candlelight. These people who'd chosen to be here, who'd chosen me, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt like I belonged. "This is what family is supposed to feel like," I said quietly, almost to myself. Evelyn squeezed my hand across the table. "Chosen family," she said. "Built from people who choose to stay." I nodded, tears pricking my eyes. "These people choose me every single day." Ruth raised her glass. "And we always will." That night, after everyone left and the house was quiet again, I sat down at my computer in the small office that used to be Richard's. The cursor blinked on the blank screen. I'd been thinking about this for weeks. Whether I was ready, whether it would help anyone. Maybe my story could reach someone who needed it. Someone who was being told they weren't wanted. Someone whose family treated love like a business transaction. Someone who thought they had to accept cruelty because it came wrapped in the word family. I took a deep breath, and I started typing. My name is Claire Donovan. I'm 61 years old, and 9 months ago, my daughter tried to end my life. Looking back at my story, this painful chapter of family drama stories that nearly cost me everything I see. Now, what I couldn't see. Then I was so desperate to be loved that I became invisible to myself. Don't be like me. Don't wait until someone tries to end your life to realize you deserve better. Here's what I learned from these family drama stories. Blood relation doesn't guarantee love. When someone shows you who they are through exclusion, cruelty, calculated harm, believe them the first time. God gave us instincts for a reason. Mine screamed warnings I ignored. I thought being a good Christian meant endless forgiveness, but God also teaches us about boundaries. Faith isn't about becoming a doormat, it's about knowing your worth as His child. The grandma stories you hear often end with wisdom passed down. Here's mine: chosen family is sacred. The people who showed up when I was dying became my real family. God places people in our path when we need them most. These grandma stories teach us that survival sometimes means walking away from those who should love us. It's not abandonment, it's self-preservation. My table is full now, not with people obligated to tolerate me, but with souls who choose me daily. That's the family God intended. If you're living your own family drama stories right now, if someone makes you feel invisible or unwanted, please hear me, you deserve better. Set the boundary. Walk away. Find your people. In all the grandma stories, I've heard the wisest lesson is this: protect yourself first. You can't pour from an empty cup. You are worth protecting. A final note. This content contains dramatized storytelling elements for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the lessons and message are entirely valuable. If this style isn't for you, that's okay. Please seek content better suited to your needs.